Oh, wait, so you guys requested a deep dive into this question.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's one that really made me think. Um, what does the woman who has everything really want?
Interesting question.
Yeah. I mean, picture this, like thriving career,
Right.
dream car,
Yeah.
killer wardrobe, maybe even that corner office with the amazing view.
She's got it all.
Yeah, she's got it all, right? But here's the thing, like, does all that external success, all that stuff, does that automatically mean she's fulfilled inside? You know what I mean?
It really gets to the core of how we define success as a society, doesn't it? I mean, we're practically bombarded with messages that tell us achieving these outward markers of success, that's what's going to bring us happiness. But in my experience, it's just not that simple.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're all on this hamster wheel, like chasing this image of having it all, but we don't ever really stop and ask ourselves, like, okay, but what does all even mean?
Right.
And luckily for us, the sources we're looking at today, they actually tackle that question head on.
Yeah, and they don't mess around.
No vague, feel-good stuff.
No platitudes.
We're talking real-world data, even some pretty surprising relationship advice.
I was really struck by how they explore this idea of the everything woman as this kind of societal ideal, but also a personal aspiration for a lot of people.
Right, it's like this archetype,
Yeah.
right? We see it everywhere, especially on social media. The woman who's like effortlessly juggling
Right, the perfect.
the demanding career, the picture-perfect family, the never-ending list of hobbies and accomplishments.
It's like, can she teach a master class on how to do it all?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is what the research says is going on beneath the surface.
Right, right.
Because our sources actually cite some studies showing that even with all those external trappings, all that stuff, a lot of these women are still longing for something more.
Like something more genuine.
Yeah, authentic, real. Like, are we actually connecting with each other, or are we just performing connection for Instagram?
Yeah. It's a great question. And that actually leads perfectly into this landmark study from Harvard that our sources highlight.
Okay, yes. The Harvard study.
Right, it's huge.
They spent decades tracking hundreds of people.
Yeah, and what they found really turns a lot of our ideas about success and happiness upside down.
Okay, I'm ready. Hit me with it. What they find.
Okay, so drum roll, please. The single biggest predictor of long-term happiness.
Yeah.
It wasn't wealth.
Okay.
It wasn't career achievements.
Gotcha.
It wasn't even physical health.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here.
It was the quality of their relationships.
Oh, wow.
The people who had those strong, supportive relationships, whether it was with a romantic partner, family, friends, those were the folks who reported the highest levels of happiness and life satisfaction over the course of the entire study.
So basically, even if you've got, like, the corner office, the designer handbag, all the stuff,
Right.
if your relationships are struggling, you're probably not going to be truly happy.
That's what the data seems to suggest. And it makes you think, right?
It does.
Like, no matter what stage of life we're in, or even our definition of success, are we prioritizing those meaningful connections in our lives?
Or are we, kind of pushing them aside for the sake of achievements and ambition?
Tough question.
It is a tough question.
Yeah.
And I can already hear some of our listeners out there being like, okay, relationships, important, got it. But come on, there's got to be more to life than just that, right?
Well, they actually address that head on.
Oh,
They bring in this whole idea of purpose, that feeling that your life has meaning, like real impact beyond just those external markers of success. It's not just about having people in your life. It's about that feeling that your life has a larger purpose, that you're contributing to something bigger than yourself.
okay, so we're talking about more than just having a fulfilling career.
Right, because while work can definitely be a source of purpose for a lot of people, it's not the only path, right? It could be mentoring someone, volunteering in your community, fighting for a cause you believe in. Maybe it's about pursuing a creative passion that just brings you joy, whatever lights you up. It's about identifying what truly gives your life meaning beyond just the day-to-day.
Okay, yeah, starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
So we've got connection, we've got purpose. But let's say, hypothetically, someone seems to have a good handle on both of those things. What then?
What else could she possibly want?
Right. What else could she possibly want?
Well, this is where it gets really juicy. They actually interviewed the partners of several women who fit this whole everything woman archetype.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and their insights are pretty revealing.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Huh.
Tell me everything. What did these partners have to say?
So one partner talked about how it wasn't about trying to compete with her success, but actively supporting her journey, being there for her. And another one emphasized those small, everyday gestures of love and appreciation. It wasn't about like grand pronouncements or expensive gifts.
Mm.
It was about showing up consistently. Like really listening, remembering those little details, just being present in those everyday moments.
So it's about those small but actually huge acts of love and support that really make a difference.
Exactly. It's about showing through your actions day in and day out that you truly see her, you value her, not just for her accomplishments, but for who she is at her core.
That makes total sense. But, I think this is where things get tricky because how do you consistently show up for someone who seemingly has it all? It's easy to just assume, like, they don't need anything from you.
That's such a common misconception, right?
Yeah.
Thinking just because someone appears to have everything, they must have it all figured out emotionally. But as we've been talking about, true fulfillment goes way beyond those outward appearances.
So how do we, like, bridge that gap? How do we know we're providing the right kind of support without, making assumptions?
Well, they actually have a really bold suggestion, and I'm curious to hear what you think.
Okay, I'm dying to know. What's this bold suggestion?
They say, just ask her.
Wait, hold on. Just ask.
It really can be that simple. Open and honest communication. Like, that's the key. No more guessing games, no more assuming we know what someone needs, because every woman is different.
Right.
What makes one woman feel valued and seen might be totally different for another woman.
Okay, so ditch the mind reading act and just like have an actual conversation about what makes her feel supported, appreciated, all that good stuff.
Exactly. Because, assuming we know what someone wants, especially in a relationship, that's how we end up with all these misunderstandings and unmet needs.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
But I know some of our listeners are probably nodding along, but also thinking, okay, sure, that's great in theory, but how do I actually start that conversation? Do the sources give any advice about how to, actually do that?
It all goes back to that idea of presence that we were talking about before. Instead of getting caught up in the what, focus on the how. Like, create that space where she feels safe and comfortable opening up. Maybe put away the phones. Go for a walk. Just sit down face to face. Get rid of the distractions, whatever works.
So it's less about like launching into this interrogation about what she wants and more about creating an environment where she feels like she can actually share what's on her mind.
Exactly. It's about building that trust and vulnerability. And I'm not going to lie, that takes time and patience and consistent effort.
For sure.
But I think the payoff in terms of deepening your connection and understanding, it's huge.
It's interesting because we've been talking about this, everything woman as this like specific type of person. But honestly, what we're talking about, it applies to everyone, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. This is so much bigger than just figuring out the desires of one particular woman. We're talking about that universal need for connection, for purpose, for presence, all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
stripping away all the stuff, all the external trappings of success and getting to the core of what actually matters.
At the end of the day, regardless of background, achievements, how much we seemingly have it all, we all share those same core desires.
I love that. It's not about having everything. It's about figuring out what's actually valuable. And that includes those things, those like intangible qualities, the stuff that brings us joy, the things that make us feel truly alive. But how do we make this real for our listeners? What can they actually do with this information?
Well, the source ends with a question, and I think it's a really powerful one. So I want to pose it to our listeners. What one small gesture could you make today to show someone in your life that you truly see and value them?
Wow. That's powerful because it highlights that we don't need these like grand gestures or these big plans to make a difference in someone's life. Sometimes those small, consistent acts of kindness, the attention, being present, that's what really has the biggest impact. Like, picture this. You come home after a crazy day at work, and your partner, instead of being like, how was your day? They just pull you in for a hug and really listen.
That's presence in action, being fully present in that moment, not just physically, but emotionally. And it just reminds us that sometimes showing up for someone, it can be that simple. Put down your phone, quiet the mental chatter, and just tune in. Really tune in to what the other person is feeling.
I love that. But, I think this goes beyond just how we show up for others. This is about how we show up for ourselves, too, right?
Such a good point. Are we taking time to nurture our own sense of connection and purpose? Are we doing those things that light us up, the things that give our lives meaning, even if they're not, part of that traditional definition of success?
Right. Like, are we filling our own cups so we have more to give to others? Because, let's be real, if we're not taking care of ourselves, it's pretty hard to show up authentically for other people.
And that brings us right back to the core of this whole conversation. It's not about having it all, it's about recognizing the value of what truly matters. And that includes prioritizing our own well being right alongside our relationships and our purpose.
So maybe the key isn't chasing after having everything. Maybe it's about focusing on those things that bring us genuine happiness, real fulfillment.
Beautiful. I think that's worth thinking about. What would it look like for you, dear listener, to really prioritize connection, purpose, and presence? What small changes could you make starting today?
Great questions to ponder.
Yeah.
But before we all get lost in our own heads, maybe it's time to start wrapping up this deep dive.
Sounds good. But before we go, I have one last thought.
Ooh, okay, I like where this is going. Give it to me. What's that last thought?
So, what if instead of obsessing over what the woman who has everything wants, we kind of flip the script and think about what she gives?
Okay, yeah, I see what you're doing there. It's like we've been so focused on what she might need from other people or what she might be missing, but we haven't really talked about all the stuff she's already putting out into the world, right?
Exactly. Think about all the roles she's probably juggling: leader, mentor, partner, friend, daughter, maybe even a caregiver. It's a lot, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
She's likely carrying a lot on her shoulders, all those responsibilities, constantly giving her time or energy, sharing her expertise.
So is it possible that what she really wants is just like to be seen and appreciated for all that she's contributing? To know that her efforts, big and small, are actually noticed and valued.
I think that's a huge part of it. And it brings us back to that whole idea of presence, right? When was the last time you really took a moment to acknowledge and express gratitude for the everything women in your life? And not just for what they achieve, but for all that unseen labor, the emotional support, all the ways they make our lives better.
It's true. It's so easy to get caught up in our own stuff, our own wants and needs. We forget to actually, pause and recognize all the amazing things that people around us are doing.
And that's what makes this whole deep dive so insightful, don't you think? It's not about analyzing this one specific type of woman. It's about tapping into this universal human desire to be seen, to be valued, to be appreciated.
Yes. For who we are, what we bring to the table, the whole package.
It's exactly.
And as we wrap things up here, I think that's a really powerful message to leave our listeners with. So to all of you out there, we challenge you. Take a minute today to show some gratitude to the everything women in your life. Tell them you see them, you appreciate them, and you value all that they do.
And while you're at it, don't forget to show yourself some love too, right?
Yes.
Recognize your own strength. Appreciate your own contributions. Remember all the amazing things you bring to the world.
Love it. Because at the end of the day, we all have something unique and valuable to offer, whether we outwardly have it all or not. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.